Entering the Bat Mayo Experience.
Bat Mayo Experience. Bat Mayo Experience. Bat Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings 2022 Oscars picks, filled out ballot, and Academy Awards bets. If you're looking just for the ballot, what you want to fill out at your Oscars party, or you're playing in some sort of pool with friends, hit the time code. Scott and I, at the end of the show, we're going to go rapid fire, fill out every category. Maybe you don't want to sit through an hour show. You want to sit through a minute to find out the picks. Even better, I'll post it to my Instagram at the PME. I'll put the link down in the description, and boom, we'll have Oscar ballots. You don't even need to watch the show. You can just copy our picks and probably lose like we do every single year. Either way, it'll be a fun experience. To talk about all of this stuff, joining me to break it down is the proprietor of the Challenge Mania Network, Scott Yager. Do I have that correct? The Challenge Mania network of shows now?
Sure. Yeah. We have the Challenge Mania podcast network. We've been absorbing and sharing other shows as well. We've got the Blonde Moments podcast on our network now, which is a great chat with Melinda Collins and her good friend Gina Vogie, where they talk about relationships and a little bit of sex talk and true crime and stuff. And then I kind of go rogue on our network as well. I have a show called The Heel World, where I talk strictly wrestling, and I am known to do a movie podcast here or there as well. I just recently did The Batmania, where I talked exclusively about the Batman, which took over theaters recently. And then I did one Scream Mania recently when I went to see the Scream remake / requel that I was enamored with as well. So we're talking everything on the Challenge Mania podcast network now, not just the challenge, but this is one of my favorite stops to make every year, Pat, chatting movies with you.
Well, if everyone out there would like to help support the show, smash the like button to the episode. Subscribe to Mayo Media Network on YouTube, obviously. And then down in the comment section, so we can rig the algorithm so it pops up in more searches, give me your favorite bet or best picture winner this year at the Academy Awards. I'm not going to lie to you, Scott. I haven't seen many of these movies. And I'll probably try to
say that every year we do this. That's the first thing you say.
Every year since the pandemic started, I have said that, because I think for 20 consecutive years, I made sure to see at least every movie that was nominated for Best Picture. I was trying to watch every movie that was at least nominated within like the big 5 categories, big 6 categories, throwing director in there as well. But especially since I've moved, like, I haven't seen Licorice Pizza. It's the first Paul Thomas Anderson movie I haven't seen on opening night. I guess I didn't see Inherent Vice on opening night, but it's kind of killing me because it didn't come out here until like 3 weeks after the fact. And then I couldn't get sitters for the kids. Having kids really threw a wrench into my movie viewing experience. I know I can watch a lot of these from home, but I really want to get to the theater to see them. And I may just have to leave that at the door. Maybe next year will be better for me with everything being open, fingers crossed, for like 12 straight months. That would be really nice, that I can kind of get out and do more of this again. But I'm just, nothing is more devastating to me than not seeing a new film from my favorite all-time director that's nominated for Best Picture, which could result in his first ever Oscar, which I'd be super pumped about. I assume the movie's good because I know who made it, but whether it's a bad movie or a good movie, I just hope he wins.
So it's funny you mention that movie, because I watched that movie at home on a screener, and had I not, it would have been equally as difficult for me to see, actually, because what happened with Licorice Pizza is, if you go down the ballot, I think every single Best Picture nominee other than Licorice Pizza, I believe, is available somewhere in a streaming capacity. Now, by the time this airs, I'm not positive. It's possible Licorice Pizza is available for purchase on VOD, but just to compare it to like a Nightmare Alley, which dropped on Hulu and HBO Max, or King Richard or Dune that were on HBO Max, Power of the Dog, of course, on Netflix, Coda on Apple. To compare it to those, this was the hardest one to see. And luckily I got the SAG screener, but if it wasn't for that, it would have been equally as hard for me to see it. And I'm with you. I mean, I normally check out the Paul Thomas Anderson movies in the theater. A lot of times they'll do like a 70 millimeter print of it here in New York because we're spoiled. But that movie dropped right in the height of the Omicron. And so not a lot of people were going to the movies. Movies, especially of that size, were getting shorter runs. I think like 9 out of every 10 screens was dedicated to Spider-Man, and rightfully so. It made $1 billion. But it's funny you mentioned that movie, because I think that's the one that when we go through this ballot and you see it's got one category it could win in, but it's not even represented as much as I thought it should be, particularly in the acting categories. And I think that's because it just wasn't as visible in comparison to the other front runners this year. Nowadays, even if you're a cinephile like a PTA or a Quentin Tarantino or a Martin Scorsese, I think the magic sauce is, even if you're doing a theatrical run, give us a streamer to enjoy it on, because even the voters who get the screeners, they like that easy click through. They like scrolling through Netflix or whatever. Oh, I'll watch that PTA movie. And so I love the movie. And I actually think even though it got a lot of nominations, it's fairly underrated win-wise this year. So
well, we'll see if it can get there, because Phantom Thread won what? 2? I think it was nominated for 6, but it wasn't a contender in any of the major categories. I think it got costume design, maybe score, because I remember the score being really good for that movie.
Yeah, and I'll say about that movie, of course, Daniel Day-Lewis at the helm. He got the nomination. I think 1 or 2 of the actresses picked up nominations as well. And that was a late bloomer, got the Best Picture nomination. Licorice Pizza, is the opposite, does not have the best actor in the world in it, has 2 unknown actors. The actress, of course, is from a band, Haim, but this is her first acting debut. She's phenomenal in it. She picked up a BAFTA nomination, but nothing here on the Oscar side. Cooper Hoffman, who is Philip Seymour Hoffman's son. This is, I believe, his first movie ever. He's the other lead. He's great in it too. And then it's sprinkled with all these supporting performances by Bradley Cooper and Sean Penn and Benny Safdie and things like that. But in a weird way, this is to me the most accessible Paul Thomas Anderson movie he's ever made. Boogie Nights, one of my favorite movies of all time. If you told me you found it off-putting, I would at least understand, because it's about the porn industry, right? There Will Be Blood is obviously like very cutting and biting in a lot of ways. It's about a very deplorable main character. You mentioned Inherent Vice. That's a very polarizing movie. Phantom Thread, the first time I saw it in the theater, I didn't really love it. Paul Thomas Anderson doesn't necessarily make crowd pleasers. This one is like, honestly, it's like his boyhood, right? It's like his coming of age movie. It's the stakes are like almost like so low, you can't even believe it. It's just about these 2 young people coming together and navigating through the 70s in Hollywood and kind of working all these odd end jobs. And it's just super enjoyable. There's a couple online talking points that are upsetting people with the screenplay and things like that. But other than that, this is the Paul Thomas Anderson movie I'd almost feel the most comfortable, like, telling a friend to watch going in blind. I'm not going to be like, hey, you're bored on a Saturday, watch The Master. That could ruin that guy's life. But this is a really fun movie that I do look forward to talking to you about when you actually do get to see it, because almost like hard to believe it is a Paul Thomas Anderson movie in a way, because it's so low stakes. It feels like a Richard Linklater movie visually and audibly, and a lot of the music choice. It does feel Paul Thomas Anderson in it. I don't want to say that he's not, his auteurism is not visible, but it, like, almost subject wise, script wise, feels more like a Linklater movie.
I kind of feel bad because, I love There Will Be Blood. I think it's better than No Country for Old Men. Obviously, everyone disagreed with me on that year, but that was his year for the Oscars, to win them all. And then it just turned out he lost them all to the Coens, who are also way overdue to win all the awards. It's just so strange that you have 2 movies that are probably widely regarded as 2 of the top 5 or at least 10 movies of this millennium both came out within like 3 weeks of each other.
And that was also the Michael Clayton year as well, which is like in a different year. You think about it, not just for Michael Clayton, the movie, but for Clooney, the actor. He has to go up against Daniel Day-Lewis. That's not going to happen. I feel like what's so funny is when you look back on it, it seems unfortunate, but as Oscars pundits or people who enjoy a little suspense with the Oscars, that's what you want, right? Normally what you get is, you have a nomad land bulldozing through the Oscar season, and you don't have that second contender or something like that. This year it feels like it could be similar. We're going to start talking about it, but that year is such a great year for me. I point to that as one of the best Oscars years, movies years ever, because it has 2 of the best movies in the last 20 years, as you said, if not more so, on the same ballot. Recently, we had the year where Parasite won. That's one of my favorite movies of all time. I'm so happy it won, but sucks for Tarantino, who made maybe his best movie since Pulp Fiction that year and got nothing out of it. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Scorsese made The Irishman, which, degree of difficulty wise, the fact that movie works, everyone across the board down to Joe Pesci kind of got blanked by that year.
Hold on. The Irishman is terrible, by the way. It's a great movie. It's a bad movie. That is a 4-part miniseries. That is not a movie.
Yeah, but that, to be honest with you, it's funny because someone has now, I think Netflix even did this, whether it's formally able to be watched this way on Netflix or not, I have seen a graphic that breaks it up into episodic pieces, right? I saw it in the theater, which I would guess is not where you saw it.
No.
I saw it here in New York at a screening. De Niro was there to talk afterwards. But this was a Netflix movie. That's how 9 out of 10 people saw it, is at home with Netflix on your TV, where you have your cell phone there. You've got emails coming in. You got, whatever. People are loud in the background. the degree of difficulty of holding your attention for 2 hours, let alone 3.5, is much higher at home than in a theater. That's why I like going to the theater as much as possible. And the movies I see in the theater, I do end up enjoying more, particularly long ones or slow ones, or movies that are sort of more, festival kind of topics and things like that. This movie was meant to be seen in a theater. For being a 3.5 hour movie, when you see it in the dark room, when you see it in the theater, when you hear the crowd reacting at the moments and things like that, it doesn't feel as long as it does at home. I've since watched it at home. I agree with you. It does kind of move and breathe like a series, but that's almost like oddly, ironic and sort of like makes sense because it's a Netflix movie. So I don't know. I love The Irishman. It was in my top 5 or 10 that year, but that was such a stacked year. Movies like that, movies like Marriage Story, movies like 1917, movies, a lot of those films that year, you'll end up looking back on it and being like, oh, what happened? Oh, they went up against Parasite. So
I like 1917 a lot. I like Parasite more, but seeing 1917 in theaters, I think is something that you needed to do versus watching it at home. This is why this is why I haven't seen a lot of these movies that I do want to go to the theater to see them, because I'm like you. I always enjoy it more in the viewing experience I was supposed to see it. I remember when Roma came out, and that was, you could watch it on Netflix if you wanted, but I was still in Toronto at the time, and Toronto has the 70 millimeter things. They also have the Netflix theater where you can go in, and the TIFF Lightbox where they have the film festival will show all of the high-end movies from Netflix. And I mean, at that time, it was basically just Netflix, a handful of Amazon movies, and that was it for the streaming services. That was like 3 years ago. And watching Roma on the big screen, because I watch it once at home too, and I was like, it's all right at home. This is great in the theaters. Was your favorite scene from The Irishman when 107-year-old Robert De Niro beat that guy up and looking like he was 107?
What's so funny is the discourse ends up being about the de-aging and the Robert De Niro moving weirdly and things like that. And those things never jump out at me. I mean, they jump out at me as like, I'm willing to laugh about this when talking about a movie, or like it makes a funny meme. Those don't like ruin a movie for me. They rarely do, at least. I mean, there's sometimes maybe a movie can't get out of its own way because something's too goofy or whatever. But to me, it's like, if that's your only issue with the movie, is the question like, would I rather have this been, I don't know, like who's a younger actor, Bobby Cannavale instead of Robert De Niro? No, I really loved watching De Niro, Pacino, Pesci, and Scorsese do it together one more time. You know what I mean? So like if during the All-Star game, they did a 3-on-3 and Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan, all these people played, would it look weird? Yes. But would it also be great to like be in the room or like to watch that and experience that? It would serve that purpose too. So I found so many interesting things about that script that were very meta about these guys being old and about these guys sort of being at this like stage of their career and sort of looking back on the Goodfellas of the world and the Casinos of the world, but now through this lens that extends into literally the elderly home that he ends up in at the end of the movie. And to be honest with you, things about their looks, as far as like looking too old to be playing this character or this de-aging looks a little off, it all kind of fed that narrative to me. So to me, it's like, I don't know, maybe I was just the target demographic for it, but I was very enamored with The Irishman, and the degree of difficulty, as I said, the fact that movie doesn't suck as much as you say it does, to me, almost makes it better, because it wasn't like a layup. It's not an easy, subject matter. It's not an easy script. It's not an easy length. It's not all this stuff. And the fact that it works for me, I think made me really enjoy it. But really quick, what you said about There Will Be Blood and No Country for Old Men that we so infrequently get, what stands out to me is that being so great is, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here, although you disagree and you think it was better than No Country, you're at least okay with saying that No Country is this amazing movie that beat it. So often we have like Social Network loses to King's Speech, which is a fine movie, but really, you know what I mean? And so often you have to kind of look back on something and say, wow, this brilliant movie, like people point back to Brokeback Mountain losing to Crash, which was sort of an average movie, even if it was a crowd pleaser and like had a lot of star power in it, that's normally what we get. We so infrequently get like a Clash of the Titans where even if you disagree and you wanted There Will Be Blood to win, you're okay with No Country for Old Men winning. And I wonder if this might be one of those years that we're about to talk about, but I think not, probably.
Probably not, because I mean, once we get into the odds here for Best Picture, we'll find out what actually has a legitimate chance. And it really seems to be coming down to two movies at this point. One being the front runner, the one being the one that people just like. And before we get into it, I did want to talk about strategy with this little thing, because you brought up a reaction to Licorice Pizza on social media that are talking points. I think we learned with Green Book that stuff gets overstated.
I agree. Actually, some of it gets overstated. Some of it gets understated. Like a more recent example, Bohemian Rhapsody, that is a movie that was very well received in the theater, but then ended up winning the Golden Globe for Best Drama. And Rami Malek ends up sweeping the Oscars, even though I think for the most part, the Oscars the experts you would have asked would have preferred, say, Bradley Cooper, who actually sang and really became a rock star, an original character in the movie he directed, A Star Is Born. And yeah, again, none of it matters. Like if you're on Twitter, you would think it's the opposite of what the voters end up doing. Something that has changed is there's a big change in the Academy voting base. They've brought in a lot of new voters internationally, a lot of younger voters, a lot of younger filmmakers and actors and things like that. So I don't know. I wonder if the discourse will start to show up more on the ballot than it has in the past. But yeah, you are totally right. And with Licorice Pizza, I don't really worry so much about the discourse getting in its way. It's more the lack of sort of, because with Licorice Pizza, it's almost like the only times I saw people talking about it was the discourse. And the people like you who would have loved to talk about other stuff in it haven't seen it. So that's kind of its issue there. I think the lack of eyeballs on it and the lack of chatter, the lack of, oh, this is the weekend we all talked about Licorice Pizza. Instead, it's just these think pieces that pop up about some of the controversial choices that Paul Thomas Anderson made in the movie. But that's kind of par for the course with Paul Thomas Anderson. And I don't think necessarily has gotten in his way before or would get in his way here. It just seems to be the only representation for the movie on social media. And I think that's the issue.
That is a major issue when it comes, because it's not going to win these awards, especially when we talk about Best Picture. It's sort of a non-factor in those categories. But just even down the list, will it impact the screenplay potential that it is currently the betting favorite to win? We'll see if PTA can nab his first Oscar with 11 nominations now. That would be nice to see. I just like to see him on stage. It's sort of like that overdue Oscar for, maybe he does deserve it. I can't tell you because I haven't seen the movie, but he's done some great directing, screenplay work, even Best Picture work in the past. Didn't get any recognition. Then he'll just randomly win one here. Kind of like Spike Lee for BlacKkKlansman, which I really liked, but wasn't his best movie by a long shot.
Sometimes
really.
Though, I feel like it's in a way for a guy like Spike, who I can put in a similar category as PTA, in that not a lot of his movies are what I would describe as accessible, right? Because he definitely goes for it, certainly thematically. Spike has a common thread in a lot of his movies, and Spike does not sort of put the audience first almost ever. There's a few times he has. One I'd point to is Inside Man, which I think, not a movie he wrote, but a movie he directed brilliantly. And it's just this great genre bank robbery movie that arguably is his most enjoyable thing to watch. BlacKkKlansman served both, in the sense that, obviously racism, a big part of that movie, race in general, things like that. He bookends it with the Charlottesville stuff. But the movie, I think, was very enjoyable. The screenplay was very easy to digest. You had big star performances from Adam Driver and John David Washington. And so I think he checked both boxes. He made a movie that was very personal to him, while making a movie that I would say 10 out of 10 people could watch, enjoy, laugh, cry, be appalled at parts of, and go home happy. And that is a different thing to do. And that sometimes is the thing that will eventually get you your Oscar. You know what I mean? It might not be your best movie. It might not be your Do the Right Thing, but it eventually gets you that screenplay Oscar. And this, oddly enough, might get Paul Thomas Anderson his, even though it didn't take the same risks that some of those other films did. What he did finally do was make a movie that maybe 8 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 voters appreciated the same.
Yeah, sort of like Scorsese with Departed, a movie which I love to watch and watch over and over, but might legitimately not make sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. Again, people go to like the plot holes in it and things like that. People have issue with Nicholson's performance.
It's a great watch.
And I think the Oscars should. It's so funny because as people who talk about the Oscars and complain about the Oscars, I think we almost we can't even decide what it is we're annoyed by, right? It's like we want the ratings to be better, but we also are annoyed when they try to do kooky things to get the ratings up. But also we kind of wink and nod at some of the winners, like the Crashes and the Gladiators and the Departeds of the world, and we kind of have to say,
hold on. Did people have a problem with Gladiator now? What's wrong with Gladiator?
I think that people look at the Gladiator as I love Gladiator, and to me, it's one of my favorite Best Picture winners. But I do think that Gladiator is looked at as one of the more like popcorny Best Picture award winners in the same category as, say, a Departed or a Crash or a Green. But they're not loathed like Green Book is or Crash is, but in the sense of like, I don't think a lot of, say, Oscars experts or film critics had Gladiator as their favorite movie that year, even if I did. It's almost like I think the opposite of what the average, say, film critique would. Well, and I think you and I think very similarly as well in that capacity.
Yeah, I'm always going to favor movies I just enjoy and like. And I have a very... Listen, if it was up to me, Southland Tales would have won Best Picture of the year that it came out. Obviously, that did not happen, and everyone hates that movie, except for me, apparently. Actually, there's a small collection of us on the internet who like Southland Tales, and will podcast about it. I hope someday that I can do a Southland Tales rewatch for the 3 other people in the world who seemingly enjoy that movie. I even read the graphic novels to help me try to make sense of that movie. It still doesn't make any sense. I enjoy the shot at it, though. It was a real big swing and a real big miss. Very enjoyable. Nonetheless, though, the Gladiator year was more of a product of what it was up against at the same time, though. I think in a competitive year, it doesn't win, but it's sort of like, hey, let's give Ridley Scott an award. Russell Crowe's been in 18 consecutive great movies. Now he's the lead, and he kind of took over that production. It was like Crouching Tiger was the one it was up against. It probably wasn't going to win. Traffic, it's gotten worse as time has gone along. It was cool at the time. And Benicio was kind of the star of that movie. He won his Oscar for it. Then you had Shaco La in the last Hellstrom run, Aaron Brockovich. I think my favorite movie from that year that came out, looking through it, was Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And that just wasn't going to win.
Yeah, back when there was only 5 nominees, it was it was very common where your favorite movie wouldn't be on the Best Picture list. Now that we've gotten to 10, obviously we've 8, 9. Now it's literally 10. It used to be anywhere up to 10. You've seen in recent years that some of these fan favorite movies do get in. Up was nominated for Best Picture. Inglourious Basterds was nominated. Inception was nominated. District 9 was nominated. Up in the Air was nominated. Recently, Bohemian Rhapsody was nominated. So you make room for these movies on the nominations list, even if they don't end up making a dent on the winners list. But yeah, back then, kind of a shallower pool. I forget if it was that year. Maybe I'm thinking of a different year. Was Almost Famous that year?
Yeah.
Almost
Famous. Billy Elliot came out that year, which people really liked, and whatever. What else?
Was Castaway that year?
Castaway was that year, yeah.
Yeah, maybe Unbreakable. So, I mean, I think, again, those are movies that rarely get, besides obviously a Tom Hanks getting nominated. I think, what stands out for Gladiator, to me, I can, even without looking at a piece of paper, I can tell you the amount of times that movies that were even in the contention for being my favorite of the movie of that year won, if not my favorite movie that year. And it's Silence of the Lambs. It's Schindler's List. Which, again, that came out the same year as Jurassic Park. So who am I really kidding? Wasn't my favorite movie that year, but at least I get it. Braveheart, Gladiator, Departed, No Country for Old Men, and Parasite. And that is it. And every other year I could be like, should have been this movie, should have been that movie. That should tell you something. We're talking 21 years going back to, I think, was it 89 or 91, something like that.
Sir, that's 31 years now. You're getting
31
you're
years,
getting
right.
old.
31 years. So out of 31 Oscars, I literally only agree that the movie was the best movie of that year 5 or 6 times. Should tell you something about how silly all of this is. But I am as obsessed about this as most people are about, say, the NCAA tournament or, things like that. This is, for a movie fan, this is our March Madness, quite literally, intersecting with it as we begin the tournament this week as well. So I talk about it to death, but I rarely agree,
So beyond the social media potential backlash against movies not really making that big of an impact on the voting from what we've seen, because, Chadwick Boseman was a lock last year to win Best Actor, as I heard. Turns out that didn't happen. Additionally, the Netflix Best Picture never winning run seems to be a real thing, although everything is on a streaming service now, so how can that be held against Netflix?
Yeah, I think that eventually will end, if not this year. I am not the biggest fan of The Power of the Dog, which is Netflix's main the Netflix. Here I am like talking like
I didn't realize I was talking to my grandpa here.
Yeah, so I said on the Netflix. But what I'll say is I chalk Power of the Dog up. I put it in the category of Roma, of a 1917, even though I far prefer that film. And I put Coda, which is the film that we'll talk about as the most potential upset pick, in the category of the films that upset those movies. More of like a Green Book, more of a Parasite, more of a crowd pleaser, but also with a bit of a cause here in that, it's the first major movie, especially being represented, with so many categories, with a predominantly deaf cast. The lead actress, who somehow didn't get nominated here, is the only non-fully deaf member of that family in the movie. Her teacher is, a speaking person, but other than that, I mean, predominantly deaf cast, and the movie works. It's great. It is 1A or 1B of my favorite of the year. So when this started getting steam here as an upset candidate, I'm kind of feeling the momentum. And so, as much as the people might chalk it up to the Netflix bias here, if Power of the Dog loses, I more chalk it up to it being the boring front runner that got all the nominations and was sort of penciled in as the winner. And when it got time to voting, people voted with their hearts and not just what they saw when all these other precursors like Power of the Dog has. And I chalk it up to it maybe not even being as good as Coda. Like, depending on what you look for in a movie, if you look for an enjoyable experience, I did not enjoy it as much. I do not want to watch it again as soon as I might watch Coda again. That being said, I can appreciate a lot of the craftsmanship and things like that is sure to still probably pick up on the 27th. I just, I wonder if this year we might chalk it up to the Netflix bias, but if it's not that's getting in the way for Power of the Dog, if it might be the dog itself.
Well, let's get to the best picture odds right now at DraftKingsSportsbook.com. If you're in a state which allows you to wager on exotics, you can bet on the Academy Awards at DraftKings Sportsbook. So the favorite is Power of the Dog right now. It's minus 280, meaning you'd have to wager $280 to win 100 back. So to win 380, you would have to wager 280 if you're unfamiliar with how these odds work. Coda, as you mentioned, is 4-1, so bet 100, win 400, so you'd end up with 500 at the end of it. So those are the two. Belfast is plus 650, so 6.5 to 1. Then there's a big drop off to King Richard, West Side Story, both 16 to 1. Then another drop off to Dune, Don't Look Up, Licorice Pizza at 28, 35, and 35 to 1. Drive My Car and Nightmare Alley 50 to 1 and 80 to 1. So I think that there is something to, because I watched Power of the Dog and I really liked it. And it seems geared to try to win Oscars, is the one thing that I will say about it. I found it to be an enjoyable movie. It's slow. It's pretty boring. You really admire the movie, even if you don't necessarily like it all that much. Whereas I haven't seen Coda, but the only buzz that I've heard about it from everyone, and now you've kind of reiterated that people like this movie. It makes them feel good. And sometimes that's enough.
Yeah, it's interesting because I watched it knowing that it was, nominated for all this stuff. But this movie, I think, broke at Sundance. I want to say if it wasn't 2020, it might have even been 2019. It was purchased by Apple for $25 million. But, I think the people who saw it then were like, wow, I love this movie, but this feels like it's probably its ceiling here. Maybe this movie comes out in a March or September and makes and is a crowd pleaser and a heart warmer. But honestly, I put it in the category of movies that don't get highlighted and awarded enough. And I think the fact that for whatever reason, it has managed to skirt some of that, typical narrative of just feel good movies like this. Look, there's nothing dazzling about the camera work or the cinematography. A lot of it takes place in classrooms and on the backs of fishing boats. It's just a really great, fun movie that will make you cry at least 3 times. It is an unexplored or underexplored world in the sense that, you really get a sense for how a deaf family with one hearing person. That's a hearing person in the family, and they're the coda. They're the person who has to, represent their family in a lot of ways, and the kind of the the shouldering of that in their life. And, just as a viewer, you feel like, wow, this is something I did not know a lot about. I am learning about this along the way while it's tugging at my heartstrings and while it is entertaining me for a nice crisp runtime of about 2 hours, if not less. It's almost the opposite of a movie like Power of the Dog, where Power of the Dog kind of feels like class,
Yeah.
It's like film class. And having been a film major at Syracuse University, I can tell you that it's like, something I describe that way, in that you're watching it, it's good. It has to be good. The guy who is teaching you about film decided to put it on, but you're not having a good time, and so I do feel like that might be down the stretch here. If we get voters who vote with their hearts in the movie they actually preferred or enjoyed, now that Coda has started winning Best Supporting Actor awards across the board for Troy Kotzer, we'll get to that, picked up a screenplay award along the way. I actually like Coda as an upset pick here, particularly at the plus 400. Here's a caveat, though, Pat. I know we're recording this a little bit in advance of when you might be running it. This is the one category I could see this playing a part in the odds, and it's possible if Power of the Dog wins this weekend, it won't affect it at all, or if those odds might just get stronger. But the PGA awards are this weekend. And I do think that if anything other than Power of the Dog wins, especially Coda, those odds could come down a bit. So if you're watching this or listening to this after the PGA Awards and the odds are slightly shifted, that might be because Coda ended up picking up a very valuable PGA win, because in addition to the SOG Ensemble win, which it got a couple weeks ago, that is a big precursor for a potential Best Picture upset. So I like Coda as a play. I really do. And I think Power of the Dog as well is, if you feel like it's just going to finally get that Oscar for Netflix, minus 280, if it stays there, is not terrible for a favorite. So honestly, both are interesting plays. I prefer Coda because I just feel like we're moving in the direction of feel-good winners in the Oscars, potentially even if some feel like upsets at the time. Remember, Parasite at the time, I think, was 2-1. 1917 was the, preconceived favorite to win that year. And I feel like similarly to, even if you disagreed with it, Green Book beating Roma, Parasite beating 1917, we could see Coda beat Power of the Dog here on the 27th.
And then you have Belfast in this like weird middle tier. I didn't see Belfast.
I loved it. It's a great movie.
Great movie?
Yeah.
But yeah,
I really like it. And it's 90 minutes, which I love.
Oh, that's pretty good.
I was like, he deserves a separate award just for getting that cut in under, it's like in a day and age where 2.5 hours is the new 90 minutes. It seems like for even like Judd Apatow comedies, you're like, all right, this movie's over. Oh no, there's a third act with Eric Bana. I'm talking about funny people. It's like all these movies need to be like this massive opus. Whereas like, you can't just have a 90-minute movie anymore. And this movie almost feels small because of it. A lot of people compare it to Roma, but I think what separates it from Roma is that it's just nice and tight there. So I really like Belfast, but I don't think this is the category it'll get represented in. It might in one of them, but it's not going to be this. I think this is a 2-dog race between Coda and Power of the Dog.
All right. Well, I don't want to waste much time talking about the other ones. I mean, if you compare it to Roma, I would say that the major difference would be that one is in English and the other one would be in Spanish, which is probably a bit more appealing to more voters, at least at the Academy Awards, even though there is more foreign influence in the Academy now than there ever has been. But it's still predominantly English speaking, and you can kind of gear yourself towards that a little bit. I've always been trying to predict these out. The only other two that I saw on this list were King Richard and Dune. I love Dune. I thought Dune was incredible.
Yeah, Dune's awesome. And it's so funny. I was talking about like what everyone's complaining about the Oscars, and there was some talk about, hopefully Spider-Man will get nominated for Best Picture. It's like, well, Spider-Man or a movie like that did get nominated for Best Picture and down the ballot. Dune, like, it's almost like because Denis Villeneuve directed it, people aren't considered. I mean, but this is a big sci-fi blockbuster popcorn movie that got nominated for Best Picture and got nominated across the board, befuddlingly so, not in director, but in every other category as far as crafts go. So I really like Dune. I'm glad it's represented here. I don't think it has a shot per se, but I do think it will pick up a fair amount of the technical awards and probably score.
That's what I was thinking, that this is sort of the Mad Max of this year, where it's acknowledged as being a really great movie, no chance of winning, but it's going to win 6 technical awards.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of people comparing it to Mad Max Fury Road, and I think it will have a similar representation on Oscar Sunday. Ironically, both those movies, people pretend that there's like not people in them. No, even buzz in any. Not even. I'm not talking Oscars Final Five. Like no actors acknowledged ever once from October to now for either of those movies, which I think is just incredible. I mean, Charlize Theron might have picked up like a MTV award or something, but for some reason, it's almost like they decide like these movies that are great blockbusters, great visually, whatever, that we almost respect them so much that we have to pretend that none of the performances worked. And I thought many of the performances in Dune worked. I was a sucker for Jason Momoa in that movie. I'm not saying he should be nominated for an Oscar, but maybe like a Critics' Choice nod or something like that. But yeah, I'm a Dune fan. And I think Hans Zimmer will pick up his second Oscar, which is crazy. He's only going to have two. Crazy he only has one, in contention for being the best composer of all time. It'll be good to see him up there. Well, kind of see him up there since they moved the category. But yeah.
Are you surprised that King Richard was treated like an Oscar movie? Because in a different world, it's just a super kind of fun movie of a story people kind of know, but don't really know the entire story with people that we're familiar with. Is just having Will Smith in it making it this level?
I think it clearly brings more eyeballs to it. I really like King Richard. It's in my top 10.
It's good. It's a good movie. It's not great.
I think that in the new, so maybe I agree with you but in the Bohemian Rhapsody era of a movie, because I remember, and I keep using that as an example, because I remember seeing Bohemian Rhapsody in, what was it, November, coming out of the theater feeling like I needed to stick up for this movie. I'm like, that movie was enjoyable, especially for Queen fans. You should go see it. But then by the time it got 10 Oscars nominations and won the Golden Globe for Best Drama, I was like, whoa, wait, hold up. I didn't mean like that. And so in that day and age that we live in today, I'm not surprised, especially with the story that it's telling. Ironically, it's like named after the father, but it really is as much about the mother and, of course, Venus and Serena Williams as young adults. And so I thought it's really good. Great supporting cast. Also, it got nominated for the SAG Ensemble Award. And so I actually think it will, we'll get to Best Actor, but I think Will Smith is going to run away with it. But I think I actually is a sleeper to pick up another award as well. I don't think it has a chance in Best Picture, but when you got 10 nominees, I'm totally cool with it being one of the 10. And I'm not surprised in 2022. I would have been surprised. A good example is The Blind Side, right? So like that movie in a vacuum does not feel like an Oscars movie at all, right? But Sandra Bullock wins the Oscar for it, and that momentum sort of catapulted it into the Best Picture category as well, which it had no chance of winning. But yeah,
I thought The King Richard was better than The Blind Side.
Yeah, 1,000%. Oh yeah.
And
I'm just saying,
The Blind Side is always on TV though, so I've seen it probably
in the
100
post
times.
Blind Side world we live in, though. I'm almost never surprised by a major star performance-led movie that has like a heart-tugging story getting in there as that 7, 8, 9 slot in the Best Picture category. Again, Bohemian Rhapsody, Blind Side, there's probably some other examples, but in the 10 Best Picture age we live in, those movies are getting in more and more. And I think that's good. I like that because, again, that is an art. Like, yes, Power of the Dog is an art too. Making New Zealand look like Montana is an art, and having these big sweeping landscapes and making me fall asleep at 3:00 on a Wednesday. Yes, these are all art forms as well. Jane Campion, we honor you. But making a really enjoyable, suspenseful sports movie that's actually telling stories we already know, like who wins these matches, yet it was still, really suspenseful. And I thought Will Smith was great, created this character, kind of, disappears into it as much as a Will Smith can. I thought some of the other little, who was it? John Barenthal, and there's a lot of the smaller roles in that movie, I think are carrying a lot of the weight as well in it. And I do think it's just a crowd pleaser. And without having to create a category called Best Crowd Pleaser, I do think it's fun. And I like the fact that now maybe one or two of these slots are reserved for just well-made crowd pleasers. And Coda and King Richard, I think, are those two this year.
I just think it's kind of crazy that King Richard, at least by the betting odds, is more of a favorite to win Best Picture than Dune is, when they're not even comparable in types of like good movie.
Yeah, I think it's because we'll get to this category down the line, but I think it won an editing award recently, and obviously Will Smith has been winning Best Picture, Best Actor along the way, and again, it might just be reflective of where the money's coming in. Like that's possible. Like when you get into these,
Yeah,
when you get
these exotic markets, there's not like they cap how much you can bet on them. I don't think that money really sways it all that much because no one is taking that much action on the Academy Awards, especially this far out.
Movie. Is it possible, like, for instance, on a DraftKings that is predominantly populated by sports bettors, right, that a movie like King Richard resonates with them more than a Dune does? And that if they're going to throw a flyer, if someone's throwing $10 on Best Picture on something that's going to win them $2,800 or whatever it would be, $280, and they want to have some fun and they really know they're throwing the $10 away, maybe they do it on King Richard instead of Dune because it's just more familiar to them as a sports fan.
Potentially, but that's potentially true. But knowing that neither one of these ones is going to win, you think that the book would be like, hell, King Richard 50-1. Why not make it more appealing for those type of people to bet on it?
I'm often surprised why, like, once we get down the stretch and there's literally 2, maybe 3, like, are they almost crafting the scale with the other ones just to make it believable? Because I agree with you, like, make them all 100-1 and just take people's dollars and it'll all add up to more money along the way, in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess people are going to bet on it no matter what if you're looking for this sort of market, but that's me. I don't even really want to talk about West Side Story. Like, that's just not my jam. Not that I don't like musicals. I love musicals. I don't like West Side Story. I don't know what it is. Not for me. So I'm not even going to see the remake. I'll just go watch the original if I really want to go watch something.
I would watch it if I were you.
God. Why?
But well, I had never seen the original, so this is my first, but it is interesting. I'm not a big movie musical guy. I love musicals on Broadway, but like movie musicals often don't work for me because they like possess this level of realism for like 30% of a scene. And then all of a sudden they start singing and it's like, oh, I forgot, like this isn't real. So like, I'm not the target demo, but this movie is very well made. It's very well shot. And up until I saw Coda and up until Coda started getting the momentum, I wondered if West Side Story was the potential upsetter, crowd pleaser that was going to take hold of this and other categories. Turns out it's not. But at the time I thought it might be. So I did have it on my radar, but it's on Disney Plus. It's easy to watch. I would check it out at some point. But also if you think you're going to hate it, you probably will. I will say that.
I assume it's everything that I think it is, listen, I get why people like it. It's nominated for Best Picture. People seem to like it, but I know what I like, and it's not going to be this. Do you have a favorite movie musical? Because I think Moulin Rouge is way better than all of them combined, except for maybe South Park the movie.
So favorite movie musical. So I remember at the time liking Chicago, but like when it won Best Picture, I was like, really? But again, I liked it at the time. I walked out of The Producers, which I loved on Broadway, and then like literally walked out of it. Earlier this year, I actually really liked In the Heights, oddly enough, which completely got blanked and, was not well received. But I did like that one. Favorite movie musical. I'm trying to think. I mean, like I'm really not the target demo for these. What I liked this year that everyone hated? I watched it on a plane. I saw it on Broadway and I was prepared to hate this movie. Other than Ben Platt's awkward hair in it, I liked Dear Evan Hansen. So I thought that worked for me. So
okay.
That's my hot take for the day.
I heard it was terrible.
I know. I thought it was going to be terrible. But to me, a lot of the discourse about that movie, I think, was a bunch of people who hadn't seen the show, like complaining about the character being deplorable and this, that, and whatever. I'm like, wait, this show won the Tony Award for Best Musical. We've already had that. That doesn't matter. Stop it. Like, and I will say it is awkward to watch Ben Platt, who's like going on 30 with this weird curly hair, playing a high school student. But other than that, I did still think it worked as an adaptation. And as a fan of the show and the music, I did enjoy it. And I thought I was going to hate it based on what I'd heard. So.
From the years that we've been doing this, talking it through, I look at the back end of the Best Picture race and I see Don't Look Up at 35-1, Drive My Car 50-1, Nightmare Alley at 80-1. Your favorite movie of the year, with a few exceptions, I feel like comes from the backpack of these. They're not going to win, but they were recognized because they were so good. Am I reading that right, or do you have no time for any of these ones?
I've seen every movie on the ballot this year other than Drive My Car, which I will watch. It's long. It's available on HBO Max. I'm going to watch it before Oscar Sunday. It's the only film I have not seen yet. I've seen the rest of these, and I liked all of them to varying degrees, honestly. And Don't Look Up, I think, again, polarizing discourse there. You can poke holes in all these movies, but I enjoyed all of them. I don't think, I guess in a perfect world, maybe some of these would have a better chance of winning a Best Picture. But I would also, if they did, look at it as like a down year, or like, none of these movies are going to maybe make it into I just did like my top 50 of the last decade, for instance, right? And right there at the end, there were a lot of movies in that 2019 year that shot not just into the list, but like right to the top of it. I mentioned Parasite and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think were in my top 10. And then other movies I really loved and appreciated. I don't know, even if you include last year, 2020, and this year, that really any of these movies hopefully will be in my top 50 when it comes down to talking about this next decade here. But they're enjoyable. They have things to like about them. My favorite movie of the year this year, since you asked, is not on any of these lists. And so it almost makes you feel like, oh, wow, was it really that good? But the movie I saw in the theater, I really came out of it loving it, was Last Night in Soho by Edgar Wright. And it's kind of this thriller horror movie-ish that takes place in 1970s London, and it stars Anya Taylor-Joy from Queen's Gambit and Thomasin McKenzie, and it is and Diana Rigg in her last role before she passed away. And I really like that movie. But of the Oscars contenders here, my favorite two are Licorice Pizza and Coda. Those were my favorite. But I did like Dune. I did like Nightmare Alley. Don't Look Up worked for me in, I don't know, 3 out of 5 ways, and then in a lot of ways it didn't. And I have to see Drive My Car. And who knows? Maybe I text you and I go 2 weeks from now and I go, man, I should have watched Drive My Car because that was my favorite movie of the year. I don't think that it will be, but maybe.
Briefly, I want to jump to animated feature in the odds because Encanto is minus 800. It's the overwhelming favorite to win. Is there anyone with a 2, 3, or 4-year-old who I think I've watched this movie for 200 hours so far this year, and I don't think I've watched it from start to finish.
I love Encanto. It's great. The music's catchy. I'm all in. It's cool. But I do think we have to get to the underdog odds there because I think there's a live dog in this category.
All right. Well, is it the Mitchells versus the Machines, which is 5-1, and Flea is 8.5 to 1. Luca 13 to 1, and Raya and the Last Dragon is 25 to 1. Probably not going to win. You think Encanto can lose?
I do. Well, because Mitchells and the Machine just won at the Annie Awards, and I believe it won at Critics' Choice. So it has picked up 2 sizable precursors in the last week, and so I will say it is still not the favorite. But you said it's 5-1.
Yeah.
If you're cozying up to watch the Oscars, and you want to bet on things where you're not trying to bet on Jane Campion and Will Smith where like you have to bet $12,000 to win 50 cents, and you want to have a couple things out there that could happen, right? Encanto is still the favorite and it's still minus 800 for a reason, for sure. Okay, but I'm not burying Mitchells and the Machine in the wall like they do to Bruno in Encanto. Okay, we do talk about Mitchells and the Machines, even though I haven't seen it, but I've heard great things about it. And those 2 wins they're not to be scoffed at, right? So I will say people might be having Encanto fatigue. You might see a lot of parents voting for Mitchells and the Machine because maybe it will like somehow convince their kid to stop playing Encanto. But I think Encanto is represented in other categories here. Has a possibility to win song and still get Lin-Manuel Miranda on the stage that way. So again, I wouldn't throw your house on it, but 5-1 I think is interesting for Mitchells and the Machines.
It should be worth mentioning too that it is minus 800 favorite, like the prohibitive favorite in this category. You mentioned it didn't win 2 of the precursors, and the fact that it's not nominated for Best Picture, I do think says something about how strong of a grasp it has in this category. Because as you mentioned, like Up ends up getting nominated. Like the truly great animated movies are working their way into the Best Picture categories too.
Yeah, I think Encanto is more beloved for the music, for being like, obviously a great representation of culture, and an enjoyable movie, no doubt, and worthy of one of the 5 spots, but it is not it is not your Inside Out. It is not your, even to compare it. And again, I actually didn't love this movie, but I don't even put it in the category of Soul last year, which I think people were, there's a different level that animated movies can hit where they're obviously very pleasing to the kids and they've got the music or whatever, but they're also like an existential philosophy course, right? So like Soul, Inside Out, Up, these other movies, even Toy Story 3, that work their way into the Best Picture conversation, if not nomination. I would not put Encanto there. And thus, I think it is a more plausible upset for Mitchell's versus the Machine than it would be. So we'll talk about it when we get to foreign film or international film, because Drive My Car, for instance, is in Best Picture. To me, when an animated film or an international film makes it into that category, it's almost a spoiler for the other category, right? Like, it doesn't make sense that Drive My Car should lose international feature if it also got into Best Picture, even though there's a very worthy contender there in Worst Person in the World. It just still should. It doesn't make sense why it would be in Best Picture and not win Best International. Same goes for this. If Encanto had made it into Best Picture, lock, don't even try to bet on anything else. But because it didn't, I don't know, 5-1, I think is, look, I'm not, again, not your house, but if you want to put $20 on it to win $100, right? I think it's fun.
Scott, you don't need to preface it by saying don't put your house on it. Viewers of this show know we give out losing picks all the time, but they're going to be at D. You're going to win five times your money.
Had they put their house on Parasite when I did your show that year, they'd have two houses. So all I'm saying. That
is true. Actually,
you'd have a summer home and you'd have the house from Parasite, which is a phenomenal house.
At 2-1, you'd actually have three houses because you'd still have your original house too.
And then you'd have, exactly. You'd have a house in Boca. You'd have a house in Vancouver. Oh, my God.
The international feature, it's not even close. Drive My Car is a minus 2,500 favorite. To explain how big of a favorite that is to people, you would have to wager $2,500. And if it wins, you would win $100. So probably not worth it.
Yeah, those odds make me want to drive my car off a bridge. I have no interest in betting on that. Oddly, it's like, I think it's stupid to bet on long shots that have no chance, right? Like, that's throwing money away, right? But I almost think it is, when you're betting on a favorite like this, where you have to bet so much and there is still a chance they lose, right? Like Chadwick Boseman was a similar favorite last year, although it began to come down towards the end and he still lost. So I almost chalk this up into like a similar category of like not recommending it when something is such a prohibitive favorite. There's a couple more of these, but this one is probably maybe the biggest one. So no, but yes, I would co-sign that. Check it off on your ballot. I would say Drive My Car is winning international feature.
All right, let's try to rapid fire through some of these acting categories because I don't know how much competition is going to be here. Will Smith is a minus 800 favorite to win Best Actor. Benedict Cumberbatch is plus 450, so he's 4.5-1. He's the only one really challenging him. Right now you have Andrew Garfield, Denzel in The Tragedy of Macbeth, Javier Bardem in Being the Ricardos. After watching what happened last year in this category, I'm not going to say that anyone is a lock. This feels really locky, though.
Yeah, I think the difference between this year and last year is I think last year Anthony Hopkins in The Father really was a better performance, right? Like I'm someone who voted for Chadwick Boseman to win the SAG Award, which he won, right? And I'll be honest that part of the reason I did that, as much as I thought he was great in the movie, right? Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Part of the reason was I did think it was, tragically poetic that we could honor this guy on his, obviously, in his last major film role and his last chance to pick up one of these honors. And so I think a lot of people expected people to vote in that way. And the Oscars voters did not. A lot of people picked the performance they thought was better, which in this case was Anthony Hopkins. And gun to my head, I would tell you, I thought Anthony Hopkins was better too, In this case, though, I think most people just think Will Smith was better than Benedict Cumberbatch or, say, Andrew Garfield. And a big sign of that was recently he won the BAFTA award, which that's a home game for Benedict Cumberbatch and Andrew Garfield. And Will Smith ended up taking that one home, too. So I think a lot of people want to see Will Smith finally get his Oscar. I think this is not going to be in the category of an Al Pacino winning for Scent of a Woman. I think this is as good of a performance from him as some of those other films he's been nominated for. And I think it's a really worthy win here. I think a lot of people like this movie. They love Will Smith, and I think Will Smith's going to get it done. And I will say, for as much as I think he's a lock, minus 800, I'm not saying do it, but but if you want to work it into a parlay, I don't know if that's permitted on DraftKings. Minus 800 is not the prohibitive betting favorite odds. I would assume he'd be like minus 1,600 at this point. Yeah. So, I mean, and now a lot of people, oddly enough, are talking about Garfield as much, if not more, as a spoiler as Cumberbatch, but I don't think either one of them can do it. I think Will Smith's getting it done.
Yeah, I think Cumberbatch is up there. I mean, it's kind of crazy to see a Best Actor category with 5 very recognizable names, like Andrew Garfield being by far. I mean, I don't even want to say the lesser known of the 5. I mean, at least to me, he's the lesser known of the 5. When you kind of track everything.
But he's a former nominee. These are all former nominees.
No, 100%. Like, what if they're just like, hey, I think we should give Denzel more Oscars? Like, that's possible.
Hey, this is not to say anything about Shakespeare, because Lord knows the guy has done great work. But I walked out of the tragedy of Macbeth.
Really?
Shakespeare is not for me. I know this, but I thought this is how big of a Denzel fan I am. Is that I thought, Denzel, I'm like, oh, Denzel, I mean, this is going to transcend Shakespeare. This is going to be like the Training Day version of Shakespeare. And I say that to mean like, and Coen brothers behind it, whatever. But the way this movie is shot and the way that it's staged, it really is just like you're going to see Shakespeare in the park or Shakespeare in a black box theater, except it's on camera. And it's nominated here in cinematography as well. And it was shot very well, but it's literally Shakespeare word for word. And to go back to my thing about not liking musicals, Shakespeare, when it's read word for me, doesn't work. I just don't buy it. Right. And this is a me problem. It's not a Shakespeare problem. I am a simpleton. Okay. I am a wrestling fan who hosts a reality TV podcast. I am not the target audience, but I walked out of the tragedy of Macbeth. And I think that it is a hard pill to digest. And even though Denzel is great in it for the 20 minutes I saw, I just think this is not, I think the nomination alone was kind of honoring him for putting forth that performance in this movie. And so I don't see it with Denzel here. Fences, I thought, which is another stage play, but again, August Wilson, I thought he deserved to win for that one that he directed. I think he deserved to win for the acting award for that. And he didn't win that. So if he didn't win that, I don't think he's going to win this.
So you weren't a big fan of the 2004 Merchant of Venice word for word remake with Al Pacino as Shylock?
Didn't see it is my point. Like I normally, I'm normally
Bassanio, you owe me money. It was
yeah. Wherefore art thou, Romeo? I normally avoid these things like the plague. Denzel's the one guy who like got me like questioning, like, wait, I know I hate this stuff. Like Denzel can get me to like anything, right?
And also, spoiler alert about Will Smith and his other Best Actor nominations. Maybe he didn't really deserve them, because Pursuit of Happiness may be a bottom 5 movie I've ever seen in my life. It's horrible. And then Ali, like, he's okay as Ali. Like, he's better in his best performance is probably Hancock.
His best performance is probably Bad Boys too, but
I mean, his best performance probably is actually this, and that's I think.
No, it's true. And I rewatched Ali during the pandemic, and I do think that performance is actually underrated. I think the thing that gets in the way of being able to truly appreciate that performance is how recognizable Will Smith is.
Yes,
but I think, but physicality wise, and like I do think that, like, to use an example, right, there was a movie last year that came out, A Night in Miami, and the actor, his name escapes me, who played Ali in that movie, I thought did a really good job. And when comparing his performance to, say, Will Smith's performance, the thing that guy had going for him was that I had never seen him before, or at least I didn't recognize him from anything. So I was able to kind of lose him in the Ali performance, whereas Will Smith is arguably as recognizable as Muhammad Ali himself. And thus you cannot get rid of the Will Smith. It's impossible. I think he managed to do so more in this role, but that's because this is the first time we've really seen Will Smith, the like, I don't want to use, this is the elderly man. Right. And because of that, and because let's say if Will Smith like became famous to us in his 40s, right, and then went on to play this role, whatever. This was kind of the first time we saw Will Smith in this lane, which allowed him to kind of disappear into this role as King Richard. Whereas with Ali, I mean, this is the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I mean, this is Mike Lowry doing an Ali impression, but it's a damn good one. And physically and the weight he put on and everything involved, I do actually think that was a great performance as Ali. I just think the Will Smith of it all gets in the way of being able to truly appreciate it as such.
There's also the fact that he's probably the 3rd best actor in that movie behind Jamie Foxx and Jon Voight in that particular movie, which also kind of goes a little bit of a way too, where how can you be the best actor of the year when you didn't even give the best performance in your own movie, albeit against supporting roles. But I just let's go to best actress in a leading role.
This is the live one of the 4. So this is the one to
Jessica Chastain is the betting favorite right now for the eyes of Tammy Faye, but she's only a minus 150 favorite at the moment. So not a heavy favorite whatsoever. Nicole Kidman, 2.5 to 1. Olivia Colman. Don't sleep on Olivia Colman ever, as we've found out. 5 to 1 to win this. Kristen Stewart for Spencer's, also 5 to 1. No one has really given Penelope Cruz too much love here. Penelope is down at 16 to 1. So let's cross her off. The other 4 seem like they're realistic chances of winning.
I will say, as far as plus 1,600 long shots go, and as far as people who you write off as saying cross them off go, 9 out of 10 times, if you told me, hey, I'm throwing a 10 spot on Penelope Cruz or whoever it is, fill in the blank, I would tell you, okay, just burn your money. Here, I don't think it's quite burn your money. I'll just say that. You know what I mean? Like, she does not have a good chance. She does not have a chance, really.
She has the worst chance. I've heard actually. Her by the odds. She has the worst chance of winning.
I've heard her name come up enough on like podcasts I listen to and things like that. And a lot of it is the respect as an actress that she has. I think a lot of people have respect for this performance. I haven't seen it. And again, to go back to the expansion, the international expansion of the Oscars voting body, this is a movie that might resonate more with those voters than you might think or assume going into it on paper. So again, not recommending it at all, but I'm not putting it into the category of like 5th spot, long shot, whatever. And part of the reason is, again, this is not a category that has been cemented much like the other 3 have and much like categories like Best Actress have been in the past, right? The Jessica Chastain thing is interesting because I think she was in that 3 or 4 spot going into a couple weeks ago. A couple things happened. She won the SAG Award, which for the SAG Award, Penelope Cruz and Kristen Stewart were not nominated. Okay. They were represented by Jennifer Hudson and Lady Gaga. Jessica Chastain has since picked up the Critics' Choice Award, but a lot of people were surprised by that. A lot of people expected Kristen Stewart to win that. However, what's interesting about the Critics' Choice Awards is they normally happen before a lot of the stuff. And thus the critics tend to normally vote with who they think was the best. And just by nature of where this fell in the kind of streamline of things, people wonder if this year they voted for Jessica Chastain because they kind of see the trajectory she's on. That would have been a big momentum builder for Kristen Stewart. So the fact that she did not win that, I think that moved her back on this ballot quite a bit. Nicole Kidman won the Golden Globe Award. Golden Globe, you say? Yeah, those actually happened. They did not air on national television. They were distributed on Twitter, I believe. A lot of the people who won didn't even acknowledge that they won because remember, the Hollywood Foreign Press is currently in the doghouse. But so that had as little of an effect on an award season as a Golden Globes has ever had. That being said, she's still lingering in the wings. I do think that is a better performance. Honestly, I really like Being the Ricardos. I think that movie's got an unfair shake at this point. But Jessica Chastain feels like this is her time. It feels like this is Jessica Chastain season. This is one that we'll look back on and we'll be like, she was so much better in Zero Dark 30, but at least she has one, right? Down the line, when it says Oscar winner Jessica Chastain, you'll kind of forget that it was for this. You'll kind of forget that Julianne Moore won for Still Alice or whatever, right? It's just Oscar award winner Jessica Chastain. Nicole Kidman doesn't really need it. Olivia Colman doesn't need it. And I think Kristen Stewart just hasn't picked up enough to be in contention, although I think Kristen Stewart is a better performance here as well. What I like about this category is that minus 150 for a favorite here is pretty darn good. It's the only spot on this ballot where you're getting anywhere near approachable odds to bet on the person who's probably most likely to win here. As far as upset picks go, Nicole Kidman has really lost steam here. So I think the fact that she's still in that 2 slot, interestingly enough, makes Olivia Colman and Kristen Stewart here really fun plays at plus 500. Who knows? Kristen Stewart came out these past couple of weeks. She appeared at a couple of shows. She looked great. She did walking around, talking to the press, doing the selfies, things like that. She really came out campaigning down the stretch, even though she didn't pick up any awards to go with it. Who knows? All right. If you had asked me in the fall who's going to win this thing, I thought Kristen Stewart was going to run away with it. It would be interesting if here down the stretch, if in April we look back on it, we go, wow, this is what a lot of people thought at the beginning. She didn't pick up a lot of things along the way, but she ended up winning. So 5 to 1, I think, is interesting. Again, not for your house, but maybe for your toy Encanto house that you bought your kid. They won't miss it. Trust me. Especially if it makes noise. Get rid of that thing. But this is a very interesting category. You could talk me into any of these 5 people, honestly. However, a lot of people are picking and thinking Chastain. That does feel like what's going down here. Can't complain because I love Jessica Chastain. But it's a fun one to bet on here.
I think that Kristen Stewart, at least with the history of this category, is that the Academy has historically liked to jump the gun on younger actresses in the lead category versus a young actor in the best actor category. That tends to go to someone who has put in a lot of time. You get some like gimme awards, makeup awards in that, where in best actress, like they can just go off the board and give it to whoever. I'm kind of with you on Kristen Stewart. I think 5-1's good money here. Good value on her.
And what's interesting about Jessica Chastain is I think at the beginning of this award season, people viewed Jessica Chastain as like just having been penciled in for that 4th slot or 5th slot, but with no chance of winning, just like kind of an everyone loves Jessica Chastain award, right? Or just the nomination would be. And I think a lot of people thought, oh, Kristen Stewart is the young ingenue. This is going to be her, kind of, and again, the performance deserves it as well, right? And then you have your career sort of, well awarded actresses who deserve to be nominated, but it's kind of boring to give them that second, that third. Your Nicole Kidman's, your Penelope Cruz's, your Olivia Colman's. And Lady Gaga, I would say as well, is in that category of, oh, does she get the Oscar? She ends up not getting the nomination here, but a lot of people for a while thought her performance in House of Gucci might get her at least a SAG award, if not one award here down the stretch. What happened, though, is Jessica Chastain has sort of checked both boxes at once, because Jessica Chastain is still very young. Jessica Chastain is still an ingenue, and she's still a leading actress with much of her career ahead of her. She's very well liked in Hollywood, more well liked than, say, Kristen Stewart is, or even a Lady Gaga is, because Lady Gaga is still kind of viewed as the other coming from the music industry, even though she started as a theater major. Jessica Chastain also, though, has been nominated several times before. She was nominated for The Help. She was nominated for Zero Dark 30, as I mentioned. So this is almost like kind of like a career, as young as you can get for getting that career sort of, all right, here you go. Jessica Chastain is sort of getting that while also checking the box of giving it to the young, exciting actress who has her whole career ahead of her, if that makes any sense. And I think that's what's happened here that was unexpected at the beginning. I think people looked at it as it's either going to go to a Nicole Kidman or an Olivia Colman or a Kristen Stewart or a Lady Gaga. And yeah, give Jessica Chastain that 5th slot, when Jessica Chastain has become the sort of fulcrum that connects both of those boxes. And I think that's why she is becoming the favorite here. But yeah, Stewart still waiting in the wings, but it's a long shot.
Okay. I don't want to have to go category by category anymore because there's some big favorites in some of these categories. But of the odds that I sent you, be it in best film editing, best screenplay, whatever it might be, was there any value that you saw in any of those odds?
All right, so we can cross off supporting actress. Ariana DeBose is going to run away with that for West Side Story. Possibly the only place that movie's represented on Sunday, the 27th, and she has taken every precursor, so not worth it. Troy Kotsur in supporting actor looks like the favorite here, but his odds are still in the category of maybe you could bet on them still. This has kind of flipped since he took the SAG award and since he's taken the BAFTA and other awards. So Troy Kotsur here is still the betting favorite, still someone I think is going to take this thing down, and at minus 330, again, maybe worth putting in a parlay. Cody Smith-McPhee was the betting favorite up until Troy Kotsur flipped it. I don't necessarily love him at 2-1, but those are the only two here who have a chance.
And you get category split with Power of the Dog as well, because Jesse Plemons is nominated in the same category, so that tends to work against people.
And I just think, again, it's Troy Kotsur. It could be the only way that movie gets honored on Oscar Sunday. Troy Kotsur, people, have been loving, giving him these awards. He's a journeyman actor. Getting this award is a big deal for him. Cody Smith-McPhee has many opportunities ahead of him. The one that you sent me, in addition to the screenplay categories that I want to touch on, both of those, is editing. So if you could pull up editing there, Pat, I think there's a dog here that could actually win this category. That I would actually even recommend a little bit of scratch on. It's the only one that I think is kind of a wise dog play here, especially since it's still in the underdog position, even though it just picked up the very important Ace Eddie Award.
So you have Dune as the favorite at minus 140, Power of the Dog 3-1, and I'm going to say that King Richard is going to be your play at 3-1 plus 300. Then you have Tick, Tick, Boom and Don't Look Up, 8-1 and 18-1. So it's King Richard that you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, and I think this could very well be one of the many technical awards that both Power of the Dog or Dune win. Don't get me wrong, but King Richard won the editing award at the Ace Eddies, and just like Bohemian Rhapsody won in this category, which a lot of people were baffled by, I think a lot of people will maybe vote for King Richard, thinking about how like well edited those tennis match scenes were, and a lot of and the way the movie moves. It's not typically how you view editing, but recently it kind of has been. And some movies that don't necessarily have flashy editing or aren't the most like artistic films have walked away with this award. So at 3-1, I actually like editing for King Richard as a play there.
Okay, and you wanted to talk about the screenplay categories as well. Please don't tell me you're picking against our guy, PTA.
Well, the thing about PTA is I will say the issues people have with the movie are the screenplay. That's, again, the one thing against it. Do you have the odds in front of you to see who the pole position would be?
It is Licorice Pizza is minus 250 right now, so it's a pretty big favorite. Belfast is plus 175, so 1.75 times your money.
That's the one. That's the one. If I'm gonna, those are the only two I think have a chance here. I will say in your pool, pick Licorice Pizza at minus 250. Though I don't love it as a play here. I think it's very, very likely that it doesn't win, and at minus 250, that's not a great play for something that could very well lose. I think that Belfast, this might be the lone representative of Belfast, a film that got, a lot of nominations across the board and was viewed as a Best Picture winner candidate for quite some time. Kenneth Branagh, much like Paul Thomas Anderson, wrote this screenplay, and this might be the way to get Kenneth Branagh on stage and to honor that movie. I still would put Licorice Pizza as the favorite, but if you wanted to bet Belfast, because it is the underdog here, I think that's fine too. I think it's a toss up between those two. The odds show.
Does Kenneth Branagh have a screenplay Oscar?
I don't know. I don't know if he has any Oscars actually.
He has none. 5-time nominee, 6-time nominee, has never won. Although 2 of them are for this year, so I guess theoretically he could win Best Picture or Original Screenplay this time around. But I don't know, man. 11 nominations, no wins. PTA is getting in like the Kubrick category soon.
Yeah, I think this does feel right. This does feel like where he gets his. I will just say that I think Belfast.
They like to do this too. Award Spike, award Jordan Peele. I think Wes Anderson won one of these as well, didn't he? At one point.
This is the fun. This is like the fun. This is where Tarantino wins his. You know, he's never won for director. So I think that 100%. This checks all those boxes, makes a lot of sense. But do not be surprised if the PTA heads on Monday are annoyed that Boring Belfast won this award and not Paul Thomas Anderson.
In adapted screenplay, Power of the Dog has to win? Or
not necessarily.
Or does Campion just win director and this goes somewhere else?
Well, I think this is obviously going to happen earlier in the night. And if it doesn't win this, I think it's a good sign for Coda, which is in this category, as is another long shot, The Lost Daughter, which won a precursor award. I forget which one.
Is that
Coda just picked up?
Is Lost Daughter the Maggie Gyllenhaal one?
Written and directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal, stars Olivia Colman. It's on Netflix. I think it's really interesting movie, interesting script. And I think that it's possible it could win this. I believe, what's it sitting at now? Plus 450?
Yeah, it's plus 450. Coda's plus 240, and Power of the Dog is minus 225.
Yeah, so, I mean, look, Power of the Dog, it's possible that just sweeps a lot of these categories onto a Best Picture win. But if we look back on Oscar Sunday and it picks up Jane Campion for director, and maybe cinematography, maybe score, whatever, maybe one other award, but mainly the big one is Jane, and doesn't win Best Picture, I think it could lose this also. And if it does, I think Coda kind of needs to win this to win Best Picture. So, scenario A is Coda picks up this, Troy Kotzer en route to a Best Picture win. It's not usual that a movie only wins those awards en route to a Best Picture, but it's happened. Look at Spotlight, right? The other option here, and this could lead to more likely still a Power of the Dog win, maybe a Coda win, but probably not, is a Maggie Gyllenhaal and a Lost Daughter win here, which again could still lead to a Power of the Dog win, or a Coda win, honestly. Plus 450 though is a little tight for, like, I'd like it a lot more if it was like a 6-1 or something.
Yeah.
You know,
And
for it to be worth it.
It's funny because you mentioned about the BAFTAs and the Brits not winning against Will Smith. Kenneth Branagh did lose to PTA at the BAFTAs in original screenplay as well. And Coda won Best Adapted Screenplay over there too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so I mean, look, again, PTA I do think is set up to lose here. If he does, it's going to be to Belfast, but I do still think he's a good favorite. Again, the -250 scares me because of how live Belfast is. And then on this side, I really do think that Coda and more so Coda, and Lost Daughter are alive in this thing. And I don't think, because I don't think the strong part of Power of the Dog is the screenplay. Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't. But again, I'm not the guy because I don't love the movie, but yeah.
all right, so here's what we're going to do. This is when I told people to skip to this point of the show. Thank you for checking out the time code. Smash the like while you're here if you missed that part of it too. We're just going to run through the ballot and just give our winners of the ballot picks that people need to fill out on their sheet. I got my sheet in front of me. We'll fill it out right now, and that way people can get out of Dodge with what they want to do. Best actor in a leading role, we're going with Will Smith, correct?
Correct.
Best actor in a supporting role, who was it?
Troy Kotzer for Coda.
Okay, so actress in a leading role, we talked through this. I'm good with going the upset with Kristen Stewart here.
So here's what I'll say about these ballots, right? So there's different little bit of different psychology with the
No,
ballots.
we got
right?
we gotta go through. Are you picking? We going through Chastain? We going Stewart?
Going Chastain.
All right. So I'm going with
If
Kristen
I don't
Stewart.
get the odds, I'm not going Stewart.
All right.
I'm not getting.
So you're going Jessica Chastain in the pool. So it's Ariana DeBois for West Side Story, Best Supporting Actress.
Yep.
Best Animated Feature. We talked this one through with no odds. Are we still good with going with Encanto, or do we want to go an upset here?
Here I would go Encanto.
Okay. Cinematography.
This I would go Power of the Dog.
I can see it.
I think Dune.
I think Dune's alive.
Yeah, definitely.
Costume design. I only saw Dune of these movies, so I'm going to pick Dune or is this the West Side Story?
Cruella is in this category, correct?
Correct.
I like Cruella.
Okay, Cruella it is. Best or just, I guess that's supposed to say art directing? I don't think this is directing. Is it? PTA is not nominated for Best Director, is he?
Oh yeah, he is.
He is? I didn't realize that. Good for him. He's not winning. Power of the Dog, Best Director?
Yeah, Jane Campion's a huge lock.
Yeah. Documentary feature. Any lean on this, or is this a guess one?
Actually, so there's a movie in this, Flea, that's nominated in 2 other categories. It's also nominated in international feature and in animated. So there's a school of thought here that could upset the favorite, which is Summer of Soul. So I would go Flea here, actually.
All right, so we'll get an upset, mix it up a little bit in the ballot pool. Documentary short, you can pick 1 through 5, and I can just take whatever number is listed in this order.
Well, what I'll do is I'll look at the odds on DraftKings if they're provided, and I will probably pick the favorite when it comes to Sunday.
Let's see. I don't see it, to tell you the truth. Oh, here we go. Best documentary short. The favorite is The Queen of Basketball, and 3 songs for Benazir is the only one that's even close to it. So The Queen of
Give me The Queen of Basketball.
Best film editing. We going to go with your upset in King Richard?
I'm going to take King Richard here, yeah.
All right. International feature film. Drive My Car's got to be the pick, right?
Got to be Drive My Car.
Okay. Makeup and hairstyling. I have no clue here. Gucci, maybe?
I'm going to go actually here with the Tammy Faye film that Jessica Chastain is in.
All right. The Eyes of Tammy Faye, makeup and hairstyling. Best original score.
I'm going to go Hans Zimmer Dune for this one.
All right. So Dune finally picks one up. Best original song. I mean, it's got to be Encanto. It's the only song that anyone knows anymore.
There's a school of thought that they might want to give one to Billie Eilish, who's nominated for the James Bond. So I'm okay with you taking that here, but I'm going to go Encanto.
So Encanto, I have no idea who it is, but Encanto for the win there. Best picture, we're going to take Coda? We feel good about that?
I personally am going to go Coda, and I think most people in your pool are going with either that or Power of the Dog, so flip a coin.
All right, so let's go Coda. We'll differentiate there a little bit. Production design, feel like this is going to be tough for Dune to lose.
Yeah, I think Dune will probably take this, but I really like the production design in Nightmare Alley, but I don't think it's going to take it, but I would go Dune.
animated short, we are looking at the favorite here being Robin Robin minus 175. Does that work for you?
Works for me.
All right. Live action short film. The favorite is The Long Goodbye, and it's a pretty heavy favorite, so that sounds good enough for me. Would you have a real edge in these categories if you actually like knew stuff about these ones, you think?
You know, there's a school of thought that if you just watch them per se, it could give you an advantage, because this is one of those things. It's like the lower end fights on a UFC card where like the MMA experts really do make bank on those, because like the odds setters just can't possibly know all these guys. So if you just like watch the fights and stuff, you can actually like find some discrepancies there. Similar with this, I think if you watch them, you're ahead of the game. And then I think if you maybe like read one or two things, you could find something here that hasn't caught up to the chatter.
Best sound in all these tech categories, I assume Dune is the heavy favorite.
Yeah, I got to go to Dune here. Yeah, they've combined these. It used to be sound design and sound editing, and now it's just sound. It just sounds good.
Feel like you've seen more of these superhero movies than I have. So visual effects, I would lean Dune, but there might be something that blows it out of the water. I don't know.
This is the lone nomination for Spider-Man, so it's like, possibly, we get, I don't know. What's funny is like Tom Holland is not going to accept this award on behalf of Spider-Man. Yeah, I would give this to Dune as well, which looked great.
Per the betting odds, it's a minus 3,500 favorite. So yeah, probably should go with Dune in that one. Adapted screenplay. I'm going to stick with Licorice Pizza for my original screenplay. So the final one is adapted screenplay.
I'm going to stick with you. I'll stick with you too. For adapted, though, I'm going to go Coda, because I think Coda needs. So on my ballot, if I'm picking Coda to win Best Picture, I think it could use this here to do so. So I'm kind of going all in, which this could win you the ballot if you do these two and you're right. And if you're wrong on one, you're probably wrong on both. So might as well.
Well, we did this when we did it with Parasite. We went all in on Parasite, and that was the difference. I won my Oscar pool that year. So hopefully it works out the same thing. Coda could be this year's Parasite. Now I have to.
I think it is. Honestly, I'm getting similar vibes. Won the SAG Ensemble Award just like Parasite did, gaining momentum down the stretch. And another thing, if you pay attention to a lot of these like awards, breakfasts and banquets and things like that, people are like gravitating towards the cast the same way they gravitated towards the cast of Parasite. Of course, all relative unknowns the same way that the cast of Parasite were, because they were Korean, and a lot of the actors besides Marlee Matlin in Coda are relatively unknown as well. People are just enamored with them, big stars coming up to them and want to take photos and things like that. And you get the same appreciation for them and for the cause and for the film that you did with Parasite. And it's equally as much of a crowd pleaser. So I'm feeling the momentum. I really am. And Jane Campion, getting in her own way the other day, accepted a speech and said like a really kind of not the smartest joke and jab she made at the expense of not at the expense of Venus and Serena Williams, but it was a poorly worded thought that not a lot of people liked. And I wonder if just even that is going to kind of, continue the derailing of Power in the Dog and the momentum for Coda.
Well, if you didn't know anything about the Oscars, now you do. Scott Yager. You can follow the Challenge Mania Network. If you're a big fan of the Challenge, like I am, you'll want to be listening to both the podcast, going to the live shows, and subscribing to the Patreon. But you guys have so much more in terms of podcasting now. Tell me more about the wrestling podcast, because Razor just died. It really kind of bummed me out. And normally I see wrestling deaths come along. I'm like, yeah, that's sad. It's a wrestling death. I expect like 2 of these a week, but Razor hit me in a really weird way. I was legit bummed out.
Yeah, he's a guy a lot of us grew up watching. He had kind of 2 main runs in wrestling, one as Razor Ramon in WWF, and then 2 as under his real name, Scott Hall, in WCW as part of the NWO. Huge part of our childhood, huge footprint on anyone who grew up watching wrestling in the 90s. And then, he's had his ups and downs and his demons and things like that. And, around 2012, 13, something like that, Diamond Dallas Page really helped him get his health and his substance abuse issues in order, and really extended his life probably by another 10 years. And in these last 10 years, we've really gotten to spend a lot of time with him on and off camera. He's been doing the convention circuit. He was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame twice. Gave this great speech the first time where his closing remarks are now being used to eulogize him, where he says, bad times don't last, but bad guys do. And so it's interesting when something like this happens, you really get a you get a snapshot of how much wrestling means to so many people, even people who aren't like plugged into the wrestling world, celebrities, broadcasters, podcasters, everybody coming out of the woodwork to share thoughts about Scott Hall, Razor Ramon. And you saw that this week. So clearly, he meant a lot to a lot of people. And this is really tragic because he went in for a hip operation and ended up having complications to the surgery, suffered 3 heart attacks. And then, he never makes it out of the hospital. And so, for a guy who had so many struggles along the way, made it. I mean, he died at 63, which is obviously too young for across the board. But when you look at some of his peers that are no longer with us that died in their early 40s, the British Bulldogs, the Mr. Perfects, the Big Boss Mans, the Bam Bam Bigelows and whatnot. And we got, 63 years out of Scott Hall on our screens and touring the country, throwing toothpicks at people. Real short story. I met him in, it was WrestleMania 33 or something like that, 2017. I stopped him. I said hello. I said, "Can we take a photo?" He says, "Sure." And as I'm getting my phone ready, he reaches into his pocket, takes out a toothpick, puts it in his mouth. We do the photo, says, "Thanks," puts the toothpick back. And that right there is just like living the gimmick and having it on you at all times. And so yeah, sad and tragic. I talked about it this week. If you want to go and listen to the Heel World, I spent a lot of time talking about Scott Hall and his career and what he meant for the business and things like that. I kind of started the Heel World as we're expanding the Challenge Mania podcast network because this is something I was thinking and talking about on my own anyway. I go to several wrestling events a year anyway without the podcast. And now I have a podcast to talk about it on and to share the added insights and things that I know about wrestling and think about wrestling with those who care about it. And if you don't care about it, then, swipe on by and just listen to the next Challenge podcast or the next Oscars podcast. But if you do enjoy wrestling, it's mainly me talking to myself into this headset about wrestling every week. And you can get it on the Challenge Mania podcast feed.
You can follow Scott on Twitter at Shot of Yager. That's with a Y, not a J. So you can figure that one out on your own, I think. Elliot, listen, I hope you can figure that out on your own. If you're looking for the ballot itself for the Oscars, I've thrown that down in the description. One click, boom, you didn't even need to listen to any of this. But now that you have, I thank you for watching. So smash the like on the way out, comment in the comment section, sub to Mayo Media Network, and that will do it for me. I'm Pat Mayo. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.
Fat Mayo Experience! Experience!